Hello again and welcome to DanWhiteBooks. Today we're talking about a world ablaze. An illness has swept the globe and those who have it are prone to die in a burst of flame. Join me as we review and discuss The Fireman by Joe Hill. This is now the second book I've read by author Joe Hill, the first of which was called Horns, a tale where a man awakes with horns fixed to his head. The effect of these horns is that everyone feels inclined to tell him their deepest, darkest secrets. I really enjoyed that book. It was dark and in some strange way humorous. I'll leave a link to that review in the video description below if you'd also like to check out that one. Unlike Horns, The Fireman is a far lengthier work, clocking in at nearly 700 pages. It took me a while to get through and is one of the longest books I have committed to this year. But is it any good? Well, let me first give you a brief rundown of the plot before we discuss it all in more detail. I will forewarn before we go any further that there will be minor spoilers as we move ahead. I won't be ruining the ending and I won't be discussing any major spoilers. However, I will be detailing some of the later discoveries, so that is your warning. The Fireman is a dystopian work that depicts a terrifying plague known informally as dragon scale. The spore causes people's skin to cover with scale-like patterns. As it progresses, they begin to smoke until eventually they combust entirely. As a result, vast areas of the planet are set ablaze as those who are sick eventually combust in a burst of flame. Set in America, Joe Hill portrays the collapse of society and the panic that ensues as major locations burn and vast green land is left burnt and covered in ash. As previously mentioned, this is a long work. The start of this book introduces the main character, who's called Harper Grayson, informally known throughout the book as Nurse Willows. Harper is a cheerful and compassionate individual who cares for the sick at the local hospital. She lives with her husband, Jacob Grayson, who becomes more and more unhinged as the situation across America worsens. Harper reveals she is pregnant, and later she becomes infected. The world in The Fireman is a cruel place. As society deteriorates further, people begin to hunt those who are infected. The groups who hunt the infected are known as cremation squads and brutally kill and burn those who've caught the spore. Harper, being in danger, flees and is later rescued by a mysterious man who dresses as a fireman. His name is John Rookford and he has somehow managed to control the spore and can ignite flames from the tips of his fingers. This form of control over the dragon scale gives Harper hope that she may not be confined to a horrible death. However, the disease and its study are still largely unknown. Imagine the terror of knowing that once you've caught some type of disease, you are destined to eventually burn alive. This is the fear that drives the individuals in this book. To them, those who are infected have no hope of survival and only serve to kill more people if they are not dealt with. That is a very brief summary of the long story at work in this novel. Harper eventually finds a camp where the infected have learned to tame the spore and control it. The camp's practices and beliefs are strongly ingrained in faith, love and connectivity. However, when under threat, followers become blind to orders that are cruel and unethical. Their belief in faith convinces them that their actions are true, and their collective bond enforces this belief. Instead of using science, the followers indulge in their own theories. This part of the book has a strong connection to William Golding's Lord of the Flies, another book I've reviewed here on this channel. The collective group is eventually divided into two factions, those who blindly follow without remorse, and those who realise the harshness of the leader's actions. There are many characters in this book. Although the first act predominantly features Harper and her husband Jacob, the main bulk of the book features the camp in which Harper is taken in by. Tensions rise and eventually brew over, and you're introduced to a wealth of different personalities, some sinister but some very endearing. There is a strong emotional connection between the central characters, and despite there being so many, you don't feel lost in a clash of different people. Individuals stand out, and although this book didn't have me in tears, it did certainly tug at my emotions. People infected with the dragon scale disease are left for dead, and their will to survive, indeed Harper's will to survive for the sake of her baby, is something of an inspirational trait. Despite this book being bleak in many parts, it does instill hope in the face of adversity. Joe Hill has created a great work here. At the start, I'd admit it seems a little hard to believe. However, Joe Hill does a fantastic job at making this situation more and more believable as the book goes on. You learn further information about the disease as the story progresses, and this insight is particularly fascinating. The telling of group mentality and the darker side of collective groups, especially when law and order have fallen apart, is a stark reminder of how comfortable modern living is and ultimately how far we've come. I find books that focus on the downfall of civilization only succeed when they go into the depths at which people will sink just to survive. When humanity is reverted back to survival of the fittest, people will lie, cheat and steal to get what they want. While this individual sense of survival is not strongly touched upon in this work, the manner in which a collective group fights to survive certainly is. Two opposing sides fight for their desire to survive, and when lives are at stake, morals take a back seat. People convince themselves that what they are doing is for the greater good, and as such they hold little remorse for murder, abuse and torture. Books like The Fireman never cease to remind me of how lucky we are to live in the peace we have. The Fireman details the horror of persecution and the desire to escape it. It is a tale that questions one's very morality. How would you behave if such a crisis swept the planet? Perhaps you'll never know. My friends, thank you very much for watching this book review. The next book I'm reviewing is very much a classic. It is Stephen King's The Shining. I'm a big fan of Stephen King, and that is one book that I have never read. I'm already most of the way through it, and good things so far. So join me here again soon, and I'll be reviewing that book. Thank you very much for spending a bit of time here to hear me talk about this book. If you do want to pick it up, please see my link in the video description, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.